Hi guys! Today's video is going to be about how I managed to implement rotating platforms in our top-down 2D game. You might have seen my previous video where I talk about how much trouble this was causing me, and I finally figured it out. It turns out the cause of the problems was the difference between the global and the local position of the nodes, which was causing the transformation on the player to not occur in relation to the center of the platform. The problem is that with top down, you can't implement any of the built-in Godot things that help for like side-scrolling games or side-scrolling platforms. So like raycast or gravity or like even calling like an up and a down. And basically the solution ended up being copying the original solution that I had done for just the rotating platforms themselves, which I basically copied from Kids Can Code, and then applying it again to the player, but in a separate node, in the pivot 2 node. Basically, from here, from the node 2D down to the collision shape, is basically all just the original like Kids Can Code platform solution for rotating an object around another object. And then the trouble I was having was not having this separate pivot 2 node where you have the player as a child of it when you're applying the rotation. So as you can see, this is a pretty shitty prototype, just two Godot icons, one rotating around it. But now, as you can see, we can step onto the platform and we'll rotate around. And as you can see, there's like slipping in terms of like I can't just anchor the player to the platform, or at least I don't know how to. But for our purposes, this pretty much works. Obviously not with the Godot icon sprites. But yeah, this took me basically a week to do, so I'm kind of proud of it. The rotating platform, that was pretty easy. But figuring out how to make the player have the identical rotation turned out to be a really big problem. The problem with trying to do this in top down versus like 2D side scrolling is that there's a bunch of stuff built into Godot that makes it really easy to do it with side scrolling. But there's basically nothing that makes it easy for top down. You actually have to apply to the player the exact transformation that the platform is going through, and there's no way, or at least I haven't found a way to like make it so that the player can just be like attached to it and just kind of inherit all of that. You actually have to apply it. But basically all kinds of problems will result if you try and just apply the rotation of the platform directly to the protagonist, or sorry, the player, without there being this pivot 2 node. And it was really important, this was a problem, that the pivot 2 node be centered and positioned where the center is, and that was where the problems were all resulting. So basically this is just the solution from Kids Can Code with an added area 2D and collision shape to detect when the player steps on it. And then once the player steps on it, I have this is for when I add another platform to move to, but it's still here. Basically, we have a state Boolean that is determining whether or not the player is on or off the platform. And then if it's on the platform in our physics process, because here from the node 2D, we're rotating the pivot of the platform, and then if the player's on the platform, we want to rotate or apply the same rotation to the pivot 2. Basically what was causing me a huge amount of trouble was I could figure out how to get the protagonist to have the identical rotation as the platform, but I couldn't figure out how to keep the protagonist's global rotation at 0, because when I did this, when I set this in this code without there being this pivot 2 set to the location of the center, basically the rotation wouldn't work. It would rotate around the pivot 2, but because the pivot 2 didn't have the right position, that would be somewhere like over here. So it was really just a matter of figuring out that pivot 2 had to be the same as the center. And then I could do this. And so now the player will rotate around on the platform and not rotate, the sprite won't rotate itself. So yeah, that's basically how I did it. There's probably a way to do this maybe without using the pivot 2, with just the protagonist as a child of the center, but when I tried doing that, for some reason I then couldn't do this. I don't know why. But this solution works, so I'm gonna keep it, and I'll see how hard it is to do the like transfer to other platforms and the rotation of that. But yeah, so right now this is the platform prototype for our game, the rotating platforms. Only took me a week. Anyway, I hope you liked this video. Subscribe if you want any future updates on the game. We're making a lot of progress. I can hopefully do a wider progress report soon, because this hasn't been the only thing that we're doing. I look forward to sharing what we've been working on. Thanks for watching.